בעזרת השם נעשה ונצליח והשם עלינו ברחמיו ירוויח. We're going to start, number one, to explain why is it called Megillat Esther. So I'm going to bring three different explanations for us to understand. So Megillat Esther called Megillat Esther because the word Esther, it's hidden. That means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hidden himself from the Jewish people during the time of Mordechai and Esther. And what do I refer to? What am I saying? We know that the sin of the Jewish people in Purim was that they joined to the feast of Ahashverosh. That was the sin. What was so difficult about it? The food was kosher. The wine was kosher. So what was so bad about it? What was so bad? Why did they sin? So they sin because two reasons. Number one, because we have halacha that a Jewish person not allowed to drink alcohol with non-Jewish people. Although that the Sauda was kosher, they have a problem. That they sat and they drank alcohol with non-Jewish people.
Doesn't that only apply to wine?
Wine, any alcohol, only any alcohol. But here they drink wine, and the Megillah say that the wine was Kiyad HaMelech. Not only that, Hazal explained that if the age of the person was 20, Ahashverosh makes sure that that person got 30 years old wine. And if it was 40, 50 years old. Not only that, the other sin was that Ahashverosh took the clothes of the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol used to wear a special uniform, Bigdei Kohen Gadol. Ahashverosh took that clothes, and during the feast he was wearing them. Not only that, the cutlery, certain cutlery that was in Beit HaMidrash, they use it on a feast. That was Hilul Hashem here. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu got cross, and he sent a man at that time, and Haman put the decree on the Jewish people. And Kivyachol, kind of, HaKadosh Baruch Hu hidden himself from the Jewish people. And that's why it's called Megillat Esther. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu hidden himself from Bnei Israel in that time, from the Jewish people in that time. Because the sin that they joined the feast. That's one idea. The second idea is, why is it called Megillat Esther? Because the idea of the fasting, who was behind the fasting first? Esther. Because Esther said to Mordechai that him and the rest of the Jewish people should join her with the fasting. In that case, because she started the fast, and she was the one to start the atonement for the Bnei Israel or to the Jewish people in Persia, she deserved, for that reason, that the Megillah is going to be named after her. The third reason is because the word Esther, it's Milshon Esther, that Esther HaMalka hidden her identity. That means that Esther, during all of the time, hidden her identity. That's why the Megillah called Megillat Esther. Okay, so we answer why is it called Megillat Esther? Why is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu not mentioned in the Megillah? I'm going to bring two explanations. The first one, what Hazal telling us, that when Mordechai wrote the Megillah, I'm going to need it, 1252. When Mordechai wrote the Megillah, who wrote for him the Megillah? The authors, the king's authors. And the king's author was either worshippers. And Mordechai was afraid that if he's going to tell them to write the name of the Almighty, they're going to translate it to the God that they're worshipping, to the idol that they're worshipping. Therefore, Mordechai didn't mention the name of the Almighty in the Megillah. I saw other explanation, and it said like this, that Esther, when she wrote the Megillah with Mordechai, because they both written it together, she asked the sages to join the Megillah to the Holy Script, to the Holy Writing. And at the beginning, the sages didn't agree to it, because they didn't know if the Megillah should join or not. We know that later on it joined because we read the Megillah. It's part of the 5 Megillot that we have. But at that time, when the sages refused to Esther to join the Megillah to the Holy Written, Esther was worried, because Esther Malka was a righteous woman. And she said, if she's going to write the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a script, and then Chas v'shalom going to come a chance that people are going to read it, if they read it, and then they might going to throw it to the dustbin. And then it's going to be the Chas v'shalom that we desecrate the name of the Almighty, that we're not respecting it. So those are the two reasons why the name of the Almighty not mentioned in the Megillah. Although it is mentioned in the Megillah. I would like you please to go to prove that the name of the Almighty mentioned in the Megillah. Please go to chapter 5, verse 4. And we see now, if we look at chapter 5, verse 4, chapter 5, verse 4, if we look at the acronyms of those letters, what page is it? Whoever there? Sorry, 12? 1, 2? It's page 1256. Okay, I repeat. Chapter 5, verse 4. And look what it said there. Vayavo Hamelech veHaman hayom. Look at that. Can you see that Haman came? The king came with Haman today. Can you see it there? I need someone to read it. Brian, you're going to read it to us. Loud. In English.
I can't find the place.
I want you to read it in English.
Esther said, if it please the king, if the king and Haman come together to the banquet that I will have prepared for him.
Okay, so Esther asked the king and Haman to come to the banquet. So if you look at the word Yavo HaMelech veHaman, if you take the acronym of each word, the first letter of each word, you see Yud, K, Vav, K, the name of the Almighty, the holy name of the Almighty. Can you see it? So we see that the name of the Almighty did mention in the Megillah. Vehaya. Where do you see it? Vayehi. But it doesn't have the name. No, but you have to have Hey is not the holy name. The holy name is Yud K Vav K. Now, if you go to chapter 7, verse 7, now we're going to show again another example that the name of the Almighty is mentioned there. What page? 1258. In chapter 7, verse 7. Now we're gonna do it as the last word. If you look at the last word of every word that I'm going to mention, you'll see that again it's mentioned the name of the Almighty. Okay? There it says, Ki kalta elav hara'a. Norman, will you read for us?
The king rose in a rage from the wine feast and went into the palace garden while Haman remained to beg Queen Esther for his life, for he saw that the king's evil determination against him was final.
So when I'm referring, so he saw that everything turned against them. Haman realized that the decree changed against them. Okay, if you take Ki kalta elav hara'a, if you look backwards, okay, every last letter, you see that it's referring to a Kadosh Baruch Hu name. Ki, it's end with Yud. Kalta Hey, Yud K. Elav Vav, Hara'a Hey. Again, the name of the Almighty mentioned there. So we see from here the name of the Almighty does mention in the Megillah. You just have to know how to find it. Now, the last thing we have to understand that Megillat Esther been written in Ruach HaKodesh. Everyone understand what is it Ruach HaKodesh? Who doesn't understand what Ruach HaKodesh? Ruach HaKodesh is the Holy Spirit. That means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu given help to Mordechai and Esther to write. We're going to prove now that the Megillat Esther written in Ruach HaKodesh. If you go to chapter 2, in verse 15, we see something very interesting there. In verse 15, the Megillah, it says like this. I'm going to skip quite a bit. I'm just going to get to the right place. ותהי אסתר נושאת חן בעיני כל רואיה. Ze'ev, can you see it? Chapter 2, verse 15. Can you read for us? 1254.
Now we.
Okay. Now when the turn came for Esther, daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordechai, who had adopted her as his own daughter, came to the king, she requested nothing beyond what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, guardian of the women, had advised. Esther would captivate all who saw her. Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus.
That's it. Esther captivate everyone that saw her. How can you say such thing if not in the Holy Spirit? How did you know who liked her, who didn't? But if the Megillah said that everyone liked her, that's me. It was in Ruach HaKodesh. That's one. We're going to bring another two proof, and then we're going to go to the explanation of the Megillah. If you go to chapter 6, verse 6, and there it says something also interesting. What page, Ivan? 1257. In chapter 6, verse 6, Ivan, you're going to say it loudly? 6:6.
When Haman came in, the king said unto him, what should be done for the man whom the king especially wants to honor? Now Haman reasoned to himself, whom would the king especially want to honor besides me?
That means that Haman thought in his heart, okay? How do you know what there is in the heart of Haman? Only if you write the Megillah and the Holy Spirit in Ruach HaKodesh, you can write such thing. There is another source, and that you all going to agree with me. Go to chapter 9, verse 28. Meish, you're going to read for us. No, Meish doesn't have a nice voice, he said today. Jewel, will you read for us? 1261, chapter 9, verse 28.
Consequently, these days should be remembered and celebrated by every single generation, family, province, and city. And these days of Purim should never cease among the Jews, nor shall their remembrance perish from their descendants.
So that means that those days of Purim will never ever pass away from the Jewish people. And we see it's never. That means that we see from here, we brought three proof that the Megillat Esther wrote in a Ruach HaKodesh. Now let's go to chapter 1, verse 1. We start now with the explanation of the Megillah. And it says like this. Everyone there? 1252. Am I right? Am I right? 1252? Okay, and the Megillah starts like this. ויהי בימי אחשוורוש. הוא אחשוורוש, המולך מהודו ועד כוש. 27 ומאה מדינה. לירון, will you read for us?
Number
1-1.
one. And it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, who reigned from Bush to Cush over 127 provinces.
Yeah. So here we see that the Megillah starts with the word Vayehi. Our sages tell us something very extraordinary. In the Gemara Masechet Megillah, in page 10, folio 2, Hazal say wherever the word Vayehi mentioned, it's referring to sore, to agony, to pain. What pain are we talking about? So, sorry? The budget. So, I see a commentary that wrote by Rabbi Yaakov Koli. Rabbi Yaakov Koli, let me explain to you, wrote the famous midrash that all of you know. It's called Me'am Lo'ez. I don't know how many of you heard about it. It's a very good midrash. Rabbi Yaakov Koli, just to give you history about him, he born in Jerusalem 329 years ago. Although he died in Turkey and is buried in Turkey, because he gone to Turkey to help the Jewish community there. And he wrote, actually, I don't know, that's a wrong thing. I know that the book been publicized originally in the city of Izmir in Turkey. And he explained, what does it mean, Vayehi b'imei Ahasuerus? And he said like that what was the pain and the agony that the Jewish people have during the time of the Ahasuerus? That he explained that during the time of the Ahasuerus put such a heavy taxes on the Jewish people that he make them poor. He said, how do you learn that? He said, if you take the word Ahasuerus, split it to two, it say Rash. What does it mean, Rash? In Hebrew is a brother. Rash in Hebrew is a poor. That means a poor brother. That means that he turned the Jewish people that was living in his 127 provinces to poor people. I'm referring to the Jewish people. Why? Because he put on them such a heavy taxes that they couldn't cope with it until he turned them to poor people. So that's why it says Vayehi. What it means Vayehi? A sound of pain and agony and sorrow. Other explanation, and that's from the Gemara Masechet Megillah, Hazal tell us something extraordinary. Take the word Ahasuerus, split it to two, Hash Berosh. What does it mean Hash Berosh? Every person that used to hear the name of Ahasuerus or have any dealing with Ahasuerus, Rabotai, used to get a headache. Why? Because it's a Hash Rosh. What does it mean a Hash Rosh? That Hash, it means feel. Rosh, feel his head. That every person just used to hear the name Ahasuerus, used to get a headache. He used to be so afraid. Why? Because he was such a wicked king. So that's referring to the first verse. I'm going to skip quite a bit. So when you read the Megillah, it's just going to come back to you. Let's go to chapter 3, if you don't mind. And in page, chapter 3, verse 5. What page? Chapter 3, 20? 12:5:5. Okay, 12:5:5. Verse 5. Remember. וירא המן כי אין מרדכי קורע ומשתחווה לו. וימלא המן חמה. Who didn't read for us? You want to read? No, your glasses is not with you. Menachem, please read for me.
When Haman himself saw that
Loud, I can't hear you. Loud.
When Haman himself saw that Mordechai did not bow down and prostrate himself before him, then Haman was filled with rage.
Okay, so here we see that Haman got cross with Mordechai, that he didn't bow down. And many of our sages ask, why did Mordechai took a chance to make Haman so cross and put the entire Jewish community in danger? Do you understand what I'm saying? Why he didn't bow down? Anyone have any idea? No. So, huh?
Paul used to wear a Avodah Zorah tied to his belt.
Okay, so we'll explain that. So first of all, the simple explanation that the Mefarshim explained, that Haman have a tattoo. Some people say it was on his leg, some people say it was on his chest. The tattoo of his idols. And Mordechai didn't want to bow down. Other explanation that the Mefarshim bring, that the commentary bring, you remember the meeting between Esav and Yaakov Avinu? When Yaakov Avinu met with Esav, Yaakov, and the entire member of his house bowed down to Esav, nachon? Who wasn't there? Binyamin. You remember Binyamin? Because Binyamin didn't born yet. What we explained last week, Mordechai was a descendant of Binyamin from his father's side. Mordechai said, I'm from descendants of Binyamin. Amalek is from the descendants of Esav. Haman is a descendant of Amalek. I'm not going to bow down. Because I'm from descendants of Binyamin. I'm not going to bow down. That's second explanation. The third explanation, it's a bit long, and focus with me. Haman and Mordechai, both of them, like I explained last week, was an officer in a Persian army. And they both gone to a same mission. Haman have his own platoon, Mordechai have his own platoon. And it was a province that caused problem. And the king Ahasuerus sent them to put that province in a siege, to conquer that problem. What happened? Haman didn't control his food and his water properly. After a few weeks, all the supply of water and the supply of food disappear. Finished, gone. Mordechai, that was a very good officer, controlled exactly what every day every soldier will get. The soldier of Haman said to him, if you're not going to give us food, we're going to kill you. So he approached to Mordechai. He said, please help us. You have enough supply. You controlled it very well. Please help me to feed my soldier. If not, they're going to kill me. Mordechai said, definitely not. I'm not going to help you. Anyway, Haman pledged and begged until Mordechai agreed, but in one condition. What was the condition? Mordechai said to Haman, you're going to turn my slave. And one condition, if you agree to that, I will supply you and your platoon enough food. Haman didn't have a choice, the Midrash says, and he did. He turned to a slave to Mordechai. But Mordechai said to him, that's not enough. I need to have proof. He said, I want you to write for me that you're going to turn my slave. And number two, I want you to tattoo it on your body. So where did Haman tattoo it? On his legs, on his knee. Hazal said. Not only that, the Midrash say, how can the master bow down to his slave? So that's why Mordechai never bowed down to Haman HaRasha. And Hazal tell us that every time that Haman used to see Mordechai, why he didn't harm him? He had a lot of patience. Because Mordechai, whenever he used to say, he used to knock on his leg, on his knee. You remember, you must slave. Look at your... That's why Mordechai, a Yehudi, never bowed down to Haman HaRasha. So when we read the Megillah, we can understand why Mordechai never bowed down to Haman. Let's go. How much time we have? We have another 7 minutes. Am I right? 7-8 minutes. Let's move on, because the time running late. I would like to move on to chapter 4, verse 16. Chapter 4, verse 16. And let's see what the Megillah tells us. And it's very interesting. Sorry, 1, 2, 5, 6. And they say like this, לך כנוס את כל היהודים הנמצאים בשושן וצומו עליי ואל תאכלו ואל תשלו ואל תשתו 3 ימים לילה ויום גם אני ונערותי אצום כן ובכן אבוא אל המלך אשר לא כדת וכאשר עבדתי עבדתי. Who didn't read? Philip. Lend them the Megillah. I didn't know that you come a bit late. Loud, Philip? I want to hear your beautiful voice.
Then Esther said to reply to Mordechai, go, assemble all the Jews to be found in Shushan, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I, with my maid, will fast also. Then I will go into the king, though it's unlawful. And if I perish, I perish.
That's it. But if you look here what it says, I don't know when you read it, if you take notice, it says something very interesting, Esther said. Go gather all the Jews and fast. But Esther says something very interesting. You shall not eat and you shall not drink. Why you repeat yourself? If you tell me to fast, it's not to eat, not to drink. Nachon Zev? So why did Esther say that? That you ask yourself. So I saw a commentary in a midrash that they explain, you know what night it was? What time it was? That Esther said to Mordechai, do not eat and do not drink. It was Pesach. Esther said to Mordechai, gather the Jewish people, tell them not to eat and not to drink. Why it's so important? I know if I'm fasting. No, she said to him, listen to me. You do not eat matzah and you do not drink the 4 cup of wine. Why? Because she said, if there is avera, I'll take it on myself. What does it say? Vetsumu alai. What does it mean, tsumu alai? You should fast on me. What does it mean, fast on me? That if you think that you're going to have avera, that you didn't drink the 4 cup of wine on Pesach, and you didn't eat the matzah on Pesach, like the Torah tells us, I'll take on myself the blame. Why? Because Esther wanted to shake the heaven. We say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hidden himself from the Jewish people. So how can she shake the heaven? By commanding the Jewish people not to drink the wine on Pesach and not to eat the matzah. And that's what it says here. Al tuchlu, don't eat the matzah on Pesach. Ve'al tishtu, do not drink. Do not drink the 4 cup of wine. Do you understand why is it repeat? Now, how do we know that she shake the heaven? That's the Chokhmah. So if we go to chapter 6, verse 1, chapter 6, verse 1, what page is it, Rabotai? Sorry? 1257. And it's very interesting in that verse. Listen what it says in verse 1. Balayla hahu nadeda shenat hamelech ויאמר לאבי את ספר הזיכרונות, דברי הימים, ויהיו נקראים לפני המלך. Who didn't read? Brenton, will you read for us? Chapter 6, verse 1. In English, in English. That's it. And that night, okay, the king cannot sleep. The king cannot sleep on that night. What night it was? Hazal explained it was Pesach night. What it means, בלילה ההוא נדדה שנת המלך. Wherever Hazal explained to us in the Gemara, wherever the word המלך with hey הידיעה, that there is hey before the melech, the king, referring to the Almighty. Hazal explained that here Esther hint to us that at that night, because Bnei Israel, the Jewish people, do not eat matcha and do not drink the wine, HaKadosh Baruch Hu couldn't sleep. Why? Because he said to the angel of heaven, what's happening tonight? I don't hear my children singing Manishtana. No one drinking wine. No one eating. What's happening here? Here's the proof that the fast, that they fast on Leila Seder, Pesach night, shake the heavens, said the Mefarshim. I would like to end and to conclude in verse 12 in the same chapter. And it's a bit strange what it said, but I would like to explain. I don't know if you take notice. Look at verse 12. וישוב מרדכי אל שער המלך, והמן נדחף אל ביתו, אבל וחפוי ראש. What page is it?
1258.
1258. Stephen, will you read for us in English, please?
Mordechai was sitting at the gate of the king, and Haman was he returned broken to his house, mourning and covered in his face of blood.
It says here that Haman HaRasha, number one, turned to his house, but he was mourning. Avel is a mourner. Mourner about what? You have to understand. So, I saw a commentary of the Mefarshim like this, that when Haman gone to King Ahasuerus, after that Ahasuerus read in the book of memory what Mordechai done to him, so he said to him, what should he do to a person that the king loved the most? And what did Haman say? That he should dress him up, put him on a horse of the king, and extra and etc. No problem. So Ahasuerus said to Haman, that's what you should do to Mordechai. And when you walk on a street, don't forget to say something very extraordinary. What did he say to him? ככה יעשה לאיש אשר המלך חפץ ביקרו. So Mordechai was sitting on a horse, and Haman was going on the front and walking, leading him. What happened? The daughter of Haman, that was on a flat, saw what's happening. But she didn't realize, because she was thinking that's her father, and Mordechai is the one to lead, and her father sitting on a horse. So Hazal said that she took the pot of sewage. In the olden day, they didn't have a toilet like we have. They used to have pot. And Hazal said that from the window, she waited for them to pass underneath the window, and she threw it down. And she threw it on the top of her father, and not on the top of Mordechai. And Haman HaRasha, in that moment, that all of that sewage pour on him, lift up his eye to see who done it. And he saw his daughter. And Hazal said that the daughter was so afraid that she committed suicide. She jumped from the window and she killed herself. And that's what it said, that Haman, number one, returned to his place. He'd been pushed to his place, but he also was in mourning. But now I'm going to make a kushiyah with you, and with that I'm going to end up. You know what is a kushiyah? It's like we're studying Gemara, but to make it a bit difficult. The Ben Ish Hai, Rabbi Yosef Haim. Rabbi Yosef Haim born in Baghdad 183 years ago. That's the city, the capital city of Iraq. And 183 years ago, that was a big Jewish community there. And he asked, I don't understand. You in the Midrash telling me that the daughter poured the sewer pot on top of him. How come that the daughter didn't recognize the voice of her father? Because usually you recognize the voice of your kids, the voice of the wife recognized the voice of the husband, and etc. How come that she didn't recognize the voice of her father? No? Listen how the Ben Ish Hai answer. That you see a Gedolim. When you think, look how the Gedolim think. And he says, very simple. Haman have to march all around the city and to scream all day. ככה יעשה למלך אשר, ככה יעשה לאיש אשר המלך חפץ ביקרו. Until he lost his voice. That means that Haman became hoarse. Didn't have any more voice. Hardly people hear them. And that's why she didn't recognize her father, the daughter, and she poured the sewer pot on top of her father. And Be'ezrat Hashem, the same like HaKadosh Baruch Hu made miracle to the Jewish people in Persia at that time, he should show us now the miracle and send us Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mera b'yameinu, amen ken yeh ratzon.